Hey guys, what's up? This is Diego here at Cinemageddon Reviews. So, I finally saw Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. This is the latest MCU movie that hit theaters. Now that I'm finally caught up, I can finally start a conversation about it, so here we go. But before we start, this is a movie that's only playing in theaters right now, and we are still living in a pandemic, so without further ado, welcome to another edition of Stories from the Wasteland. Now, one more thing before we get into the review. This is not going to contain any spoilers. I understand that there are folks out there who still haven't seen Shang-Chi, so it is safe for you to watch this video, but it's not going to be playing in theaters for much longer, so you better hurry up and go. So this movie tells the story of Shang-Chi, a gifted martial artist living in San Francisco, California under an assumed name. Eventually his father, the leader of an organization known as the Ten Rings, finds him and brings him back home to join his army once again. I have to admit, I had never heard of Shang-Chi before this movie, so I didn't know really what to expect going in. I did like what I saw in the trailers, and of course this is a Marvel movie, so I was curious to see it. And I was pleasantly surprised to see that Shang-Chi really delivered, because this was a really good movie, you guys. Maybe one of Marvel's best ones yet. It had some really fun and exciting action scenes, a lot of really good humor, but at its core, it tells a really heavy emotional story. The best performance in the movie, without a doubt, was Simu Liu as Shang-Chi. He didn't just do the best job out of everyone as the emotional standout, he also had quite a bit on his shoulders with the physical aspect of his performance, and he owned every second he was on screen. I honestly can't wait to see what else they do with this character because he was really good in it. This is a character that has two sides to him, which I honestly found very compelling. On the surface, you see this guy who's just trying to live his normal day-to-day life, but he's struggling with the fact that his past keeps coming back to haunt him and it keeps catching up with him. And some of the best parts of the movie involve him coming to grips with who he is. Another standout for me in this movie was Tony Leung, who plays Wenwu. His character is someone who has been torn apart by his search for power and struggling to come to terms with not being able to protect his loved ones and not being enough despite all that he has. And there are so many moments throughout this movie where you can actually see that in his performance, and you just feel so bad for this guy. And I'm not gonna lie, this guy might be turning into one of my favorite Marvel villains ever. So Aquafina is in this movie, and she plays Shang-Chi's friend Katie, and I loved her. I thought she was really funny, she was really likable, and she obviously has a lot of chemistry with Simu Liu in real life, which translates really well to the screen. Now, I'm a pretty big fan of Eastern cultures and martial arts movies. I don't really know why, it's just I've always found that stuff really interesting, and those are some of the cultures that I never get tired of hearing stories from. And as far as Eastern culture and the mythical aspect of Shang-Chi, this movie has quite a bit to offer, not just in terms of its story, but as far as the visuals and the production design. There are scenes in this movie that have some pretty amazing imagery. The use of cinematography and color is really sophisticated here. I would have never expected to see this in a Marvel movie, but honestly, it's pure eye candy. And probably my favorite part of the movie was just exploring the lore behind it. One thing that you don't want to have too much of in a movie is exposition, and this movie does have a lot of it, but the way that it uses it is actually really, really smart. It not only expands the lore behind the story that we're watching, but it also raises the stakes and enhances the story overall. And this is something that not only few Marvel movies do successfully, but few movies in general. It's not often that you find a Marvel movie that surprises you with how good it is. Before this, I think the only one that surprised me was Ant-Man, but even then, Ant-Man didn't surprise me this much. Overall, Shang-Chi is definitely a movie that you want to check out. I highly recommend it, not just as a Marvel movie, but also as a work of art. The action scenes were spectacular, the characters were some of the best the MCU has to offer, the story was so emotionally impactful. It succeeds as a Marvel movie, it succeeds as a story about family and learning from the mistakes of your ancestors. It succeeds in almost every way a Marvel movie can succeed. And with that said, my rating for Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is 10 out of 10. This just proves once again that Avengers Endgame was not the end of it for Marvel. There are still good stories to tell in the MCU, and I can't wait to see what they do next. Now, as I said before, Shang-Chi is still only playing in theaters right now, and it's not going to be much longer before it leaves, so I think you should definitely hurry up and go. Just please be safe out there. We're still living in a pandemic, and it's important to wear a mask and follow social distancing. So if you've seen Shang-Chi, I'm curious to know what your thoughts are. Do you like it or do you hate it? Were you a fan of Shang-Chi before this movie came out? And what's your favorite martial arts movie? My favorite martial arts movie, I would say, is The Raid Redemption. It's honestly really fun to watch. It's a little hollow in terms of its story and characters, but the action scenes make up for that and then some. As always, be sure to like and subscribe, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and please support our Patreon, we really appreciate that. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is Diego for Cinemageddon Reviews, and I'll see you on the Wasteland.